start to trickle in. A little bit late, but that's okay. Better late than never.
Yeah. All right. We're broadcasting. We are live.
Hey guys, so sorry for the delay here. I appreciate all of you guys spending the extra few minutes here. We had a little bit of technical complications on our end. Um, my name's Daniel. I'm with Brokerman. I'm an account executive here. I've been with the company for almost 4 years now, so really well versed in our platform and what we do. And today joining me is Michael with API Nation. He's actually co-founder of API Nation. So really looking forward to our conversation today on how Brokerment integrates with QuickBooks and how that process all rolls out for you guys. So for most of you on the call today, and for many of you that are not, what Brokerment is a full contract to close platform. So not only do we facilitate all of your document management, e-signature, forms, compliance in general, but we also tackle and automate the commission process for you. You know, many companies that I've worked with over the course of these years, they use Excel and, you know, it works. It's a bit of a headache, a little bit time consuming. And of course, like we're all humans, we make errors. So naturally that can happen. So what we do is we automate that entire process. Very simple. You build your commission plans within Brokerman, including sliding scale plans, which seems to be a more current trend, I would say, in the industry right now, or capped plans, if you will. But we also automate things like E&O, franchise fees, transaction fees, anything that's predictable. At the same time, you still have the opportunity to go into any transaction and make any kind of adjustments that are necessary. We all know deals are fluid, so things like referrals pop up and things of that nature. So again, the topic today is how do we get that commission or those financials into QuickBooks? And that's why I've got Michael here, the expert, who's going to be helping us out on that topic today. So give me one quick second here. And again, I really appreciate you guys, all your guys' patience with our bit of technical delay here. So Michael, what I wanted to do today, if this works for you, is kind of more like a Q&A. Because I demoed the product, I typically talked about 4 to 5 brokerages a day that are, exploring our product and looking for a good technology stack. So Michael, one of the questions that I'm obviously I encounter daily is, what kind of versions of QuickBooks do we support?
Yeah. So I want to first of all thank you, Daniel, for introducing me, and I love starting my mornings. We're talking about my favorite subject, integrations, right? What can be more exciting with that? And I'm not kidding. We just love doing this stuff. Versions is a pain topic for QuickBooks users because QuickBooks releases for online, they release updates multiple times a month. For desktop versions, they do 5 to 10 different releases a year, and then they have end-of-life products and so forth. So what we do is we support the broadest number of versions that are being used out there. Obviously, online, you're always on the newest version. That's fully supported. When it comes to desktops, we start out with QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Premier, QuickBooks Accountant, all the way to QuickBooks Enterprise. We support several versions going a few years back, matching our support for the integration to the Intuit's support of their products. On top of it, we support versions that are hosted either on-premise, so you have accountants running their QuickBooks desktop version on their computer. And then there's a popularity of these hosted services like Right Networks and several others. So it doesn't matter if you got your QuickBooks running on your computer in your office, or if it's hosted by Right Networks or any of those other services. Those versions are supported as well.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So another kind of interesting one that I get, Michael, is really like, how does the integration find agents or your chart of accounts in QuickBooks?
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's what's the point of integration if you're going to enter all of your information on Brokerman, turn around and enter it into QuickBooks. So we made it very very smart. We take a look at who the agent is on a transaction in Brokerman. So we look at the name of the agent. If the agent has a company, let's say they have their own LLC, we look at that information as well. We look at the agent's email. And then before the integration starts adding things into QuickBooks, it's going to look for that person in QuickBooks, be it the agent as a vendor is what they're called in QuickBooks, or maybe the way you have your setup as a customer. So it's going to go through that list, and it's going to find, is there an agent with that name? What about with that company name? What about that with that email address? Because it's trying to make those matches. Let's say everything fails, there's no such a match, it doesn't exist, so what do we do now, right? The last thing we want is the integration to fail. So what we do at that point is we add that agent into QuickBooks and pre-populate all of their information so you don't have to retype them.
Okay, awesome. So, if we get down to kind of more the nitty gritty, Michael, like what exactly is synced over? Obviously, we know Brokerman is processing and facilitating and automating the commissions process. So what exactly is synced into QuickBooks?
Everything that belongs within a transaction. So that's your agents or any third parties. They don't actually have to be agents. Maybe you're paying a window cleaner, right? And that's part of your closing. Or maybe you're cutting a check to a referring agent or referring brokerage, and they're not part of your transaction, but you're doing that. Brokerman gives you all of that ability to manage that. So anything that's part of that transaction, the transaction itself, obviously the 1, 2, 3 Main Street, and then all the commissions, all the deductions, any payments that went out to anyone, any income that came in from anyone, because maybe you're getting not just the commission income, maybe there's additional income that's coming in as part of the transaction. Anything that has to do with payments for your franchise fees or anything else that gets paid out.
Got it. And obviously, it's 2019 and people want to save time and, automate everything, right? Yeah. So another common question is, does Brokerman automatically create checks through the integration?
Correct. Yeah. So that's I think that's a two-part kind of question, right? There's two things that happen. You have the brokerages that are cutting checks. You have the brokerage that don't cut checks, but they need to get those entries. Yeah, they need to track that information on QuickBooks. So what the integration does is gives you options, right? If you are used to cutting checks, then you select the check option, and the integration is going to create the checks. Pre-create them in QuickBooks. There's a little checkbox usually in QuickBooks that says, I actually want these printed, if you're still doing that. And if you're not cutting checks, then the integration is going to create what's known as an expense. So that's only available in QuickBooks Online, just a feature of QuickBooks, but yeah, it actually does both.
Great. So whether you're cutting checks or not to agents, it's doable. And then, of course, we could still track those as expenses, right, if we're not cutting checks?
Correct. Yeah, they go straight in. They go in as an expense into whatever account that you've selected.
Got it. All right, cool. And, obviously there's, in the industry, there's sometimes a scramble towards the end of the year for 1099s. I think with our integration that we kind of help simplify that process and tackle it before you're scrambling on December 31st or whatever date it is. Right. But so how does that integration kind of support the 1099 process?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up now in June, because the last thing you want to do is wait until January 31st when the deadline for your 1099s is there. So when this is kind of coming back to those agents. Why is it important that those agents get matched up, that you're tracking everything by agent? Because those are the people you're going to cut your 1099s to. So what the integration does, it knows, right? It knows you're cutting your 1099s. And you might be using the 1099 service provided by QuickBooks. You could be using one of the third parties. There's multiple services that you can use to do your 1099s that attach to QuickBooks. The key for all of that is how the information is inserted. So when we build that integration, we took that into account. We want to get, when we create that vendor, there's a way to mark that vendor for 1099 tracking, and we do that. The integration does that for you automatically. Then when all of these expenses are attached to the vendor throughout the year, you keep paying your agent, you keep cutting them commission checks, and et cetera. The way those are entered and the way those are tracked, they show up on your 1099 report. So when the year end comes and you go run your 1099 report, this sync has been working the entire year, has been putting the information into QuickBooks. Your 1099 report is going to be correct. That agent will be marked as tracked for 1099 purposes. Here's all the expenses, here's all the payments that you've made to it. It makes creating your 1099 a breeze. And you can do it in a few minutes versus hours of trying to redo a year worth of books.
Hours and money spent, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's what this is about.
Yeah.
So speaking of money, another kind of common question that I encounter pretty frequently is like, what about ACHs, direct deposits? And how does that work through QuickBooks with Brokerment?
So they're the most, hands down, the most popular ACH direct deposit type of service that you can use in QuickBooks is Bill.com. And they got multiple versions of it. They got the free version or I should say on-demand version that you pay for every payment. They have the subscription versions and etc. That's the one that's most popular. There's some others that you can find that work well with QuickBooks, but they all work in the same principle. They try to find a bill in QuickBooks that you need paid, and then they pay that bill through either an ACH, direct deposit, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So the integration has an option, if that's your process, right? If this is what you want to do, the integration has an option for you to use bills. So like we talked about checks, expenses. Well, let's not do that. Let's go ahead and enter all of these payments that you need to make as bills into QuickBooks, and it's a setting in the integration. So then all of your transaction expenses get transferred into QuickBooks as bills, and your Bill.com service picks that up and starts, creating the ACH, transfers out, enters in the payments into your checking account and so forth, and it takes it from there. So the key here is set it up correctly and set up let the integration create these transactions for you. So then your ACH provider, whoever that is, can pick that up and make those transfers.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that too. And that's like a really great tool for especially like virtual brokerages, right? No brick and mortar office. It's like kind of the commonplace. All right, cool. So we know that within Brokerment, we have a really efficient report to track earnest money and kind of keep an eye on that in general. But kind of how does that work with QuickBooks, if you don't mind just explaining that a bit, Michael?
Yeah, comes up quite a bit, especially in the States where they go through audits, and this is super important. The earnest money deposit tracking and the trust accounting is another term for it that we hear. So I love the report in Brokerment because it's so intuitive, right? You have a transaction, you received this much, you've paid this much, you can, on one sheet, you get all this information on the report. That's great. How do you get that into QuickBooks, right? So, because those are not your expenses, they're not your income, they're truly, you're doing trust accounting. So what do you need to do? We have designed special workflows and special syncs specifically focused on earnest money deposit. The information from transaction and Brokerment, when it's entered in, will get transferred into QuickBooks as a deposit. So let's say you have your trust account or your escrow account, whatever it is you called it in QuickBooks, the deposit gets created in there. When the transaction closes, or maybe it lapses, maybe it didn't close, and you need to move that fund out, there's a matching entry that the integration creates, which is a transfer. It either moves the money into your regular checking account, so now you can go ahead and spend it, or maybe it needs to do a refund, and the transfer is done, refunded back out.
Got it. Okay. And what's interesting about Brokerment in general is we work with such a wide array of businesses, Michael, right? So we work with really boutique firms, mom and pop kind of brokerages, small to medium sized businesses, as well as really large enterprise companies. And for the latter, it's usually they're spread out across the country. They've got an office in Houston, they got an office in San Diego, so on and so forth. So how do they kind of manage that with the integration, knowing that there's basically separate accounts or separate offices?
Correct. What the integration is built to provide quite a bit of options out of the box, and there's if your accounting principles are the same across multiple offices, and states and so forth, then that's pretty simple. You set it up, it works. We do see customers that have a different QuickBooks instance for every office. We see it for where they go by state or by various territory. Sometimes there are partners that, maybe one partner has 5 offices and another partner has 5, and together they got another 20, and there's different accounting principles and QuickBooks. So when it goes beyond just having multiple QuickBooks files, which are supported by the integration out of the box, but let's say you go beyond that and you have truly, fundamentally different accounting methods in each one. Or maybe you're looking at the standard kind of integration and you're going, yeah, I like it, but I do things a little differently or a little unique, or I have these special cases where you guys just aren't quite there supporting it. That's true. That could happen. And we have a team of professional services, our implementation specialists, where all they do is help customers in these unique cases, customizing their QuickBooks setups. Maybe they need to dive in a little deeper, talk to the accountant, figure out what the accountant is trying to do, how far away it is from what the integration is capable of doing, maybe make a few changes to specific to that office, to that brokerage, to that customer. So at the end of the day, you considering the thousands of integrations for QuickBooks that we're doing and the robustness of the Brokerman system, you will probably be, first of all, hard-pressed to surprise us. And I'm pretty sure that even if you have the most unique requirements, there's a way that we could accommodate it. If it's not out of the box, then at least through our professional services and implementation.
So meaning, like, if I want to really track things in detail, I'm able to do so if necessary.
Well, the details are available out of the box, right? So if you got 18 different deductions on the transaction, you have to show that to your agent. You set up the sync. It creates your check, expense bill, whatever it is, right? It creates it in QuickBooks, and you have an option to have it itemized. So when you print that check out to the agent, and instead of saying, hey, Bob, here's your $2,000 commission check, you can say, hey, Bob, here's your $2,000 commission check. And by the way, that's how we arrived here. It was this much income, these 3 deductions, everything is itemized. Not only does it let you give the visibility to everybody who you're paying, but it also lets you granularly track it inside QuickBooks. That's out of the box. That's not. Okay. That's not what professional services is about. We're talking about where you have here's how we do things, but if it's Mary who owns the brokerage, we do things completely different for her. So that's a special case, right? Or if it's I have 18 offices. If it's Maryland, I do it this way. If it's New Jersey, I do it differently, and so forth and so on. This is where some of these tweaks and customizations have to take place.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, one question that kind of came up, it looks like through the chat here, Michael. So basically, does QuickBooks agent sync search by agent first, last name, or vendor name?
So there's a field in every version of QuickBooks, doesn't matter which one.
Okay.
It's called display name. So you can create your vendor and you can put, first name, last name, middle name, company name, whatever it is. But there's a field called display name. The first thing we do is search by that field. But what do we search for? Like, what do we look for in that field? Right. If in Brokerman, let's say you have an agent, Bob Smith, and Bob Smith has a company, Smith LLC. And in Brokerman, they actually entered in Bob Smith, company, Smith LLC. Then Smith LLC is going to take priority. We will search first for Smith LLC. Let's say we don't find it, we search for Bob Smith. Let's say we don't find that either. Well, at that point, all right, we'll create an agent in QuickBooks, and we'll create it as Smith LLC because we know that's what you want to be doing.
Got it. And then one other question that popped up, Michael, too. So what's the difference between just a payee and a vendor agent? And it might be a bit of a terminology game here, so.
I think so. I'm not sure that there is, because the payee is who you're paying, and most of the time you're paying an agent.
Major.
Now, when you look at, and that's, let's say, terminology just outside of QuickBooks. When you go to QuickBooks and you, let's say, create a check, the field says pay, and then you click on that field, and the first thing it gives you is a list of vendors, right? So it says, I'm going to be paying, Bob Smith. Or I'm going to be paying, whoever it is. I see that. Thank you for whoever's. Thank you, Jeff, for clarifying, extending on your question. I see what you're talking about. It the little where it says the little word vendor right next to the payee name. It just means that that person who you're about to pay is a vendor in QuickBooks. Because in QuickBooks you can have Bob vendor and you can also have Bob customer. And QuickBooks allows it. So when you're writing a check, it kind of gives you that little hint. That's a feature of QuickBooks. Kind of gives you that little hint. Here's Bob the vendor, and here's Bob the customer. It makes it easier for you to find which one you're actually writing a check to. So if you're, especially 1099 tracking, you paying agents, you definitely want them all to be vendors, because you cannot run 1099s on customers. So you definitely want every agent to be a vendor with the checkbox selected for 1099 tracking.
All right, thanks, Michael, for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got into some details here, but the ultimate premise of this conversation is save time, save money, link these two tools together, avoid the double entry, manual entry, or outside parties doing this manual entry for you. So what I'm going to be doing is I'll be shooting you guys, everybody that's been attending, a recap email, kind of breaking everything down. And for those that want to learn more about Brokerman as a contract to close platform, and of course how it integrates with QuickBooks, really simplifying your process, we'll shoot over a link to you guys so we can book a demo and kind of walk through it more on a one-on-one consultation kind of idea. And then Michael will also be providing your information in that email. Anything you want to add on or share, or?
I think I just I want to share that Brokerman is probably the most robust commission systems that we see out there, and we integrate with thousands of applications. The granularity and the details and the customization options that you're able to achieve with your financial, specifically commission calculations and so forth, is tremendous. So it's the integration as a result is extremely customizable and supports quite a bit. So don't be afraid of getting the two systems connected. We got great, solid, out-of-the-box solutions pre-built for you, and if they don't work, we can create one that does.
Perfect. Well, Michael, thanks for joining me and helping me out with the common questions I encounter day to day. So again, thank you everybody for attending. I do apologize for the hiccup at the beginning, but glad that we were able to tackle this conversation today.
All right. Good to talk to you, Daniel. Great content as usual.
All right, Michael, have a good one. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.